عن الكرة سلة. أنا داير أقول مليون مبروكات لجنوب السودان، مليون مبروكات لنجم الساطع. So Bright Star, oh yeah. Bright Star, oh yeah. That indeed we are very proud of Bright Star and the management, the ministry and the minister. Mabruk alaikum Dr. Albino. I congratulate His Excellency President Kir Mayardit for the timely directives he had given to our economic cluster to convene this historic economic conference. I also hail and thank the Ministry of Finance and Planning, headed by our able minister, Dr. Barnaba Chol, alongside the high-level steering committee for the work well done and well organized. Mabruk alaikum, Said Wazir. It is nonetheless worthy to mention that the origin of this economic gathering was basically conceived by the outgoing minister, Honorable Dear Tong. We are grateful to you, Honorable Dear, if you are around. Mabruk for the efforts. Today it is a pleasure to see you in Juba participating in South Sudan's first National Economic Conference. Your presence is a demonstration of your commitment to stand shoulder to shoulder with South Sudan in its quest for mechanisms that will stabilize its economic development foundations and find jobs for our youth and women. We are aware that South Sudan at the moment is moving carefully with optimism, guided by the agreement on the roadmap of extended revitalized action on the resolution of conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. South Sudan has a land area of 648,000 square kilometers and a population that is currently estimated to be about 13 million. After taking account of large influx of returnees and refugees in recent years, this makes South Sudan one of the most densely populated in the sub-Saharan Africa. The terrain gradually rises from plains in the north and center to southern highlands along the border with Uganda and Kenya. The White Nile, which flows through Central Africa, is the major geographical feature of the country. It supports agriculture and extensive life, domestic and rural. Now we are entering into planning in this conference. My question is, why poor planning is the core challenge in South Sudan, and even many least developed countries. In my view, a good plan should contain at least the following. It should have detailed analysis on the economy using actual statistics. It must have strategies and priorities for each sector. It must outline major activities and the instruments that we will use in our economy are to be ensured that they will be put into action plan. While selecting the ideal system for ourselves, a strategic approach must aim at the following objectives: the economic growth, price stability. We are being tortured by prices in Konya and beyond. Full employment for our youth and women. It must address the balance of payments equilibrium. Ladies and gentlemen, our issue of internal security needs to be addressed in fora like this, because security first, any other thing secondary. Our government has taken obvious measures, steps, the national security. Commendable. Improved security and deepening peace will be critical for the direct well-being of citizens throughout the country, and for achieving sustained poverty reduction. A comprehensive approach will be required, including dealing with causes of conflict, ensuring improved security within communities, and improving access to conflict resolution systems and justice. An adequate level of security is also an essential prerequisite for a business environment that will attract the large amounts of private investment capital required for broad-based and sustained strong economic growth. Our government is doing and has been doing its level best to normalize the menace. Programs for improved internal security will need to be sensitive to a number of issues. And these issues will include, number one, interventions related to the large number of internally displaced persons, IDPs, within the country. The prolonged period on conflict led to serious neglect in the infrastructure development and major destruction of coast that we all witness, leave alone this. Number two, there is continuing uncertainty about the future inflow of South Sudanese from Sudan, and we must be prepared for this. Already some 250,000 returnees have so far returned. This needs to be managed properly, beyond humanitarian, including rehabilitation and resettlement. So this urgently demands attention of the international community. Number three is continued internal conflict among ethnic and tribal groups is an itching factor. Historically, clashes have been among tribes, revolved largely around cattle. But in the more recent years, conflict has added child abduction. The activities of armed groups, etc. Continued development of the capacities of South Sudan organized forces is paramount in this respect. Land tenure and ownership is central. Is central to the task of ensuring adequate internal security. Already people are fighting left over lands. There is existence of unclear land tenure policies, rules and practices, and the territorial and symbolic role of land in disputes among communities within South Sudan. There is anecdotal evidence that the claims over land in some locations intensified in recent years because of speculations about its future value and the abundance of mineral deposits also. The last mechanism in this respect of security is to gain a stable macroeconomic, which is our subject of today. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are then the issues related to public expenditure? Success in building these alternative sources will require an extended period of sustained growth in the non-oil economy that is led by domestic and international private investment. Creating the conditions for such investment and growth is one of the major bottlenecks for our government in the decade ahead. Central to this effort will be a major build-up in investment in the basic infrastructure of the country, which is seriously deficient at this time and cannot provide basis of an extended period of strong economic growth needed to create jobs for a labor force that is growing at the speed of 5% a year. This is the rate of labor force demand in our country. And so that we can reduce the high incidence of poverty in our country. Our country carries the lowest adult literacy rate in the whole world. This is particularly the case in rural areas will be subjected to conflict. So no time for education. The time has come. Where the literacy is currently 24% in the rural literacy rate. In urban areas, many statisticians suggest 52%. The problem of illiteracy will very likely continue for a protracted period. At the present time, the literacy rate for 15 to 24 old people is only 35%. Rural again. So is that workforce of the country lacks basic skills in reading and writing. Sustained strong economic growth is expected to generate large jobs within our country, and especially for the skilled. So all the youth should endeavor to acquire skills, especially in activities like transport, communication, commerce, agriculture, and so on. The fundamental issue that confronts our government is the need for programs that will accelerate the pace at which the skills of the workforce are expanded. Lack of progress in developing a cadre of skilled and semi-skilled South Sudanese workers may result in some combination of large influx for workers and domestic pressures on wage rates for the skilled and semi-skilled also. And in turn, that undermines the international competitiveness of the domestic business community. We will have to rely on outside labor because we don't have the skill. One, weak institution capacities are also a matter of concern in South Sudan. A recent report by Dr. Kemia notes that institutional conditions in South Sudan are fragile. Delivery capacities remain extremely weak, and there is an acute need for a professional and accountable public service to create increased confidence in the government. According to a recent UNDP report also, half of all positions in the ministries, in our ministries here, were unfilled. Almost half were unfilled because of lack of capacity. 50% of public servants had only early education, and only 5% had a graduate degree. This is pathetic. So, Your Excellencies, I want to address the issue of weak operating environment in order for our private business to prosper. What do we do? Sustained improvement in the provision of infrastructure services will require the development of private sector capacities for provision of these services. Such capacities are at an early stage of progress in our nation. A small domestic private sector has emerged, which is bimodal, that is, comprising large number of small or even very small businesses on one hand, and a limited number of rather medium firms on the other. According to a recent report prepared for the African Development Bank, most of the formal businesses in the country are small and medium-sized enterprises. There are about 50 large firms involved mainly in banking, telecommunications, and manufacture, beverages. Medium-sized firms number about 500 and are mainly in construction, hotel, and restaurant services, and trade-related activities. Small firms number about 8,000 and are involved with services similar to that of the medium-sized ones. In addition to these registered businesses, there are more than 10,000 micro firms, so to speak, typically individual entrepreneurs, involved in petty trade. Almost all of larger companies are foreign-owned, as many South Sudanese still lack the capital to start larger businesses. The International Finance Corporation, IFC, stated that doing business, and this is important for our departments in South Sudan, stated that doing business in Juba ranks at 159. We are number 159 out of 183 economies in the world on the ease of doing business. This is, of course, deplorable. That means we linger a lot. We don't give our papers quickly. Imkin kalam kitu kidogo, kalam 10%. And this frustrates, investors. Muskila bitana sunu. So, let me walk to some remedies to this, to all the challenges I have mentioned. South Sudan is endowed, of course, with incredible number of natural resources, ranging from some 32 metallic. Until recently, we used to believe that the metallic minerals were some 22. Recent discoveries have put this, including by Overseas Energy and Technology. They have put 32. So you can see we are potentially rich, but we are currently poor. It is a contradiction. I agree with our fellow who said before that instead of walking, let us run. But I'm adding that instead of running, let us fly. So that at least we can catch up even with the region. We are not competing with those people who have already gone to planet Mars. Full realization of this very considerable potential will require concerted action to address a somewhat discouraging array of challenges that currently confront this newly independent country. And these challenges, these remedies will include ensuring adequate internal security, again, to summarize on that, because it is always number one everywhere and in every country. You heard Uganda, the general was saying that they disarmed they recovered some 40,000 guns. We have started, but we need much more effort. Unless we disarm our people, there is nothing we can do. You cannot invest. Yes. Responding to the challenges that stem from current and continued rapid growth in population and the labor force, promoting broad-based economic growth to reduce the current heavy dependence on the oil economy, which itself is loaded with its own constraints. Developing targeted programs that would result in sustained reduction in the current very high levels of poverty in the country. Crafting a major program of infrastructure development to overcome the current major bottlenecks to business activity and cost-effective delivery of basic services throughout the country. Providing a stable economic ambience that will create an attractive operating environment for domestic and international business and ensure economic stability for the people of South Sudan. Addressing a range of issues related to the gradual adjustment in public expenditure policies that will be required in the medium and long term in response to changing domestic needs and requirements for public service provision. Lastly, designing and implementing programs that will address the present institutional and human capacity hurdles which are confronting South Sudan is an imperative step. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, good luck to South Sudan. Let me say South Sudan, oh yeah, and all of you also, oh yeah, and thank you so much.